It's time. Time for questions. Time for answers. Time for facts. Time for opinion. Time for Heather du Plessis-Allan Drive on NewsTalkZB.
Kia ora, good afternoon. Coming up on today's show, the Prime Minister is going to join us after 5 o'clock. She'll answer your questions on what to expect during tomorrow's lockdown. So send them on through. 9292 is the text number. Still, we have questions about what an essential service is, who's allowed to go to work. We're going to speak to the guy in charge of that. And if your family is still not able to get back home by Friday, will that deadline be extended?
Heather du Plessis-Allan.
Well, the Prime Minister has promised to be much harsher, her words, much harsher at the borders to try to stop more coronavirus coming into this country. But what she has announced today as border controls, I'm just worried is not going to cut it. I'm worried it's not going to do enough. We should be quarantining absolutely everyone who's coming home from overseas, and we are not doing that. What we're doing instead is we're only quarantining people who come in from overseas who already have symptoms, who don't have plans to self-isolate alone, and who don't have plans to get home by themselves to self-isolate. Everyone else who's coming into the country can just come in and go into regular self-isolation like the rest of us. And it's obvious what the problems with this are, right? People might not have symptoms when they arrive, but they might still be carrying COVID-19 and then get sick later. In self-isolation, same self-isolation as the rest of us, they can still go to the supermarket, can't they, even if they're sick? So there is still a way that they can pass that on to other people. And really, are we still doing this thing where we are trusting people to do the right thing? Come on. That is how COVID-19 arrived here in the first place. We hope that people would self-isolate for 2 weeks after arriving here. And yet, look, we have cases of community transmission that we can't explain. And we've heard countless stories of people just willfully flouting the rules and instead going on helicopter rides. These border controls that we have had announced today are just not good enough. We need to go harder on this. Our cases of COVID-19, the ones that we already have that have popped up in the country, are almost all popping up in people who've travelled here and in their close contacts. Yesterday, 100 people were stopped at the border to check them out, right? 8 of them, of just that group of 100, 8 of them tested positive for coronavirus. Now, I want to be clear about how important quarantining is here. This isn't an idea that has been dreamt up by a layperson like me. This is a call coming from Professor Michael Baker. He wants to see quarantining at the border, and he is, as I've said before, an advisor to the Health Ministry on how to deal with exactly this kind of thing with pandemics. We cannot afford to have more cases just coming in and going into the community, because what that will mean, if we have more cases coming in and going into the community, what that will mean is more lockdowns and longer lockdowns. The lockdown that we're going into tonight is going to cost us tens of billions of dollars. We can't, as a country, afford too much more of that. We need to tighten up at the borders.
Heather du Plessis-Allan.
9292 is the text number. The email is heather@newstalkzb.co.nz. Now, we're hearing quite a few stories of people who are already breaking the isolation rules, like over 70-year-olds who really should be at home, staying away from everybody else, but going to the hairdressers instead. Now, how do you tell the people you love to stay? What is the time? It's 4:19. Lots of texts coming through. I think quite a few people are as surprised as I am that we are not going as hard on the borders as is quite obvious we need to. Heather, you're so right. Why go through all this isolation with the border controllers slack? Get real, Jacinda says a text. I can't believe we aren't quarantining everyone who is coming in from overseas, and now, OMG, what madness. And another text says, Heather, can you please explain why our lockdown is 4 weeks when most other countries are 2 weeks to start with? Is it not obvious to you? We're obviously building an extra time for all those people who are coming in from overseas and not quarantining and going on helicopter flights, etc. Although I do need to clear up, the helicopters aren't obviously going to be flying, so they're not going to have that as an option. They'll find something else to do, no doubt. Claire says, Heather, I agree. The be kind mantra by the Prime Minister is grating. It's too vague and it implies that we're not considerate people when generally most Kiwis are. And then this text really sums it up. We are at war. We need to order people not to ask. We need some military on the streets to help get the message out if it is that serious. This is no time to reason. If it is, and I agree with that, if it is serious enough, listen, we need to understand this. This is serious. If you are prepared to mothball your economy and pay tens of billions of dollars, ask people to give up their businesses, because that's going to happen, people to give up their jobs because that's happening, and potentially people to lose their houses. If we are prepared to go that far, then how in God's name are we not going further than that and quarantining everybody coming in? How in God's name are we not having police around the streets everywhere enforcing this? We're going to be asking the Prime Minister that, of course. That's obvious. After 5 o'clock. Next up, and by the way, send your texts in 9292. Next up, the Symphony Orchestra. They're doing a little thing to cheer everybody up. We're going to talk to them about that. 4:21. NewsTalkZB.